Hi everyone, welcome again to Bake Your Way Kitchen. On today's video we're going to be making a chocolate espresso dacquoise. And if you don't know what this is, it's like a meringue cake. And it's a layered meringue cake. This is a little bit more complicated than previous recipes that I've done here on the channel. But if I can do it, you can do it. Very important. We're working with the food processor, and a stand mixer. You can, we need to whip up egg whites, so if you don't have a stand mixer, use a handheld mixer. You're going to need to preheat your oven to 250 degrees Fahrenheit, 125 degrees Celsius, and you will need a cookie sheet, and I will talk about that in just a second. But first, what I really recommend for this recipe, take a look at it in detail on the website bakeyourway.com and make sure that you have everything down pat, because make sure you have all your ingredients out so there's no confusion, no mistakes, because this recipe, because it is a meringue cake, it's very important that you get everything correct. Now, this is a Cook's Illustrated recipe that I am using. It's an excellent recipe. I've made it before. It's very delicious, and I really, really hope that you give it a try because it's just phenomenal. So, let's get started. So the first thing I've got here is my food processor, and what I've got here is some nuts. I've got 3/4 of a cup of almonds, and then I've got about half a cup of hazelnuts, and I toasted them in a 350 degree oven for about 8 to 10 minutes. And these almonds are sliced. You could use whole, but I recommend the slice for this. There we go. Just going to get all of this in here. So what we're going to do is, I've got the nuts in here that have been toasted. I'm going to add cornstarch and salt. And what we're going to do is beat this or mix this until we have coarse crumbs, until the nuts are coarse crumbs, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. Alright, that didn't take too long, so we've got coarse crumbs here, and that's what we want. So now what we're going to do is add half a cup of sugar, that's 100 grams, and we'll give that a few pulses. Alright, so we're done that part, so I'll take this off and move this to the side so you can see better the KitchenAid. So what I've got here, so we're going to put this to the side. We don't need it at the moment. We will need it shortly. But in the meantime, I've got 4 egg whites, and I've got right here a KitchenAid. Now make sure your bowl is very clean, and make sure you just get the egg whites. I recommend using an egg white separator to avoid mistakes, but you can use whatever you want. So I've got 4 eggs here. Now I've also got here about half a teaspoon, a little bit of salt. If you have cream of tartar, I would recommend that, but I am out, so salt will do the trick if you don't have it either. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in, and we're going to beat this until about soft peaks, and then we will start adding in the sugar. Alright, so right now we're at soft peaks, and so that's basically, it'll be droopy, it'll have foamed up and expanded a bit. So now what I've got here is a half a cup of sugar, so that's 50 grams, and it needs to be granulated sugar. If you want, I would recommend using superfine sugar if you have it, or caster sugar, but regular granulated sugar will do. So we're going to beat this until the egg whites are very stiff and glossy. And add it in gradually. All right, so now we're done. As you can see, the beak or the peck, that little end bit, it's not drooping. It's sticking up, which means that our egg whites are now stiff, which is exactly what we want. So now what we're going to do is, first of all, I'm going to try to get everything off of here. Put that there for now. So here's our egg whites. So now what we're going to do, our egg whites are very thick. We're going to be adding in this, our nut mixture. Now make sure to add this in stages. Don't add it in all at once because we don't want to deflate. So you're going to want to use a folding technique. So kind of like this. You just fold, fold. Oh my goodness, I'm honestly so excited about this. I was so excited when I saw an opportunity to make this video. You know, it's a very good recipe. So we're going to keep adding in, probably in 2 or 3 or 4 stages, it's up to you. And just keep folding them in until they're until all the nuts are fully incorporated. So now what I've got here is a cookie sheet. Now, this is the part where it's a little more technical. So what we're going to do is we've got the egg whites here. And what I did was just using a small pencil mark, we need to make this in like a 13 by 10 rectangle. So what you need to do is prepare a baking sheet and add some parchment paper on it. And what we're going to do is now add in our meringue to the sheet, and we're going to try to spread it out into a rectangle as best we can. Don't worry if you see some white specks, that's normal. In my years of baking a meringue, I've never actually been able to get it 100% when I'm incorporating something. There's always going to be those little specks of white that just won't take. Alright, so just working at getting everything out of here. Alright, so what we're going to do is try to spread this out as evenly as possible. And it actually helps. I'm going to get an offset spatula because I think it'll make the job a lot easier. Sorry. I sometimes don't put away the stuff in my house, so sometimes things are not in the right spot, which drives me insane. I don't know about you. So once you kind of get it, get the rectangle, you can really kind of play with the thickness. You want to have it kind of as consistent as possible. So first start by making your border. Making the approximate size. I'm probably going to do this just under a 13 by 10 length, just a bit under what it calls for. So this is actually probably one of the hardest parts of the recipe, so rest assured you should be okay. So once you get it kind of evened out, it does take a little bit of time. I find with these, with this, it does take me, I usually do play with it for 5 or even up to 10 minutes just because I like to have it consistent. Okay, this is going to be probably as good as it's going to get. I mean, it'll never be 100%, but you just want to try to get as much evenness as possible. Alright, so what I usually do also is just give it a quick tap, and that's good. So what we are going to want to do is now, basically we're going to need to put this in our oven. It's going to need a while. At 250 degrees, we're looking at an hour and 15 to an hour and 30 minutes. I would say an hour 15, and basically you're looking for it to develop a little bit of color. I'll show you what it should look like once it's done. Not too much color though. What we're trying to do is have the meringue dry out. That's what we want. Now, after the hour and a half of baking time, leave it in the oven for an hour and a half. Turn off your oven, leave it for an hour and a half before taking it out. So I will probably see you in about 3 hours time. In the meantime though, you can work on making your chocolate ganache. Now, I have a chocolate ganache recipe on the website already. However, this ganache is a little bit different. There's more cream involved. What you need to do is take 6 ounces, that's about 170 grams of bittersweet chocolate, and you can melt it down with a tablespoon of butter. Once you've done that, add in 3/4 of a cup of heavy whipping cream. That's cream with a 35% butterfat content. You're going to add that in and let it cool completely. This is going to be our exterior. So we've got our exterior, we got our meringue. Now there's a buttercream that we need to do, and that's what we will do in the meantime while this is in the oven. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the oven, and we will go ahead and get started on the buttercream. Alright, so while our meringue is in the oven, we can work on our buttercream. So to do this, the first thing we are going to do is take 4 egg yolks, and we are going to put this in along with our sugar, cornstarch, and salt. And we are going to mix this together. In the meantime, I've got milk simmering, 3/4 of a cup, simmering on the stove, which I'm going to add as soon as I fully incorporate our yolk mixture. And you just want to give this a quick beating. Alright, so that's just about do it. So this was cornstarch and salt, and I'm just going to get my milk. Alright, so now, be very careful about this. So what we're going to do is, whisking constantly, we're going to add half of the milk. Half of the milk. And what we're doing here is tempering the eggs. So you need to beat it constantly to avoid your eggs scrambling. So just give this a good 10 to 20 seconds. Beat constantly, because what we're doing is we're bringing the eggs to temperature. So what we're going to do now, and unfortunately I don't have my camera by the stove, so I'm going to explain what you're going to have to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to pour this mixture back in the saucepan where we were simmering our milk, and we are going to stir constantly for 3 or 4 minutes on medium to high heat until it thickens up like a pudding. Because of the cornstarch, it will thicken up very quickly. Alright, so this is good. So I'm going to go back to the stove with our mixture here and mix this on medium to high heat for 3 to 4 minutes, and I'll show you what it looks like once it's done. Alright, so my mixture is now done. You can see it's thickened up quite a bit. So what we need to do now is let this cool completely in the refrigerator. I would recommend at least 2 hours. You could even go up to a day. It all depends on what you would like. Now, if you prefer, I don't think mine is any issue, but if you are worried about any curdling, you can put your pastry through a sieve to make sure that there's no pieces of egg that have cooked. There we go. So that's part 1 of our buttercream. The rest of the buttercream I will show you as soon as we let this cool completely. So I'm going to cover this, and make sure when you cover it, excuse me, you put the plastic skin right over the top of the pastry cream that we're using here because it prevents it from forming a skin. Important note, I have made a pastry cream recipe. For this particular one, I would recommend following this recipe because it works for this particular recipe. Usually I can say you can use my pastry cream for things like this, but this is a very different and it's a very complex recipe, and the ratios need to be exact. So I'm going to go ahead, cover and wrap this, put it in the fridge for a few hours, and I will come back, and by then I'll probably have the meringue out ready, I'll have the buttercream ready, I'll have the ganache ready, we'll be able to finish the buttercream and do full assembly. So I'll be back in just a second. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and finish our buttercream. So the first thing you need is 1 cup, 227 grams of unsalted butter. And this is softened, as you can see, at room temperature. You can see my fingerprint, so you know that that's very soft. What I've got here, now this is where you have a little bit of an option. What I've got here is 1 tablespoon of pure coffee extract and 1 tablespoon of water with 2 with 2 tablespoons of instant espresso. As an alternative, you could do an amaretto. An amaretto is kind of like a mocha-based it's kind of a specialty type drink. I don't keep it in the house. So I use coffee extract. I use half coffee extract, half water. If you don't have either, you can just use 2 tablespoons of water with 2 tablespoons of instant espresso. It's really up to you. And just let that sit for a few minutes. And then once that's done, what we're first going to do, before I go ahead and get out our buttercream, our other buttercream that we were working on earlier, the other part of the butter, before we do that, I'm going to quickly beat this for a couple minutes till it's like nice and the butter's nice and creamy. Then we will go ahead and add the buttercream, the other part of the buttercream mixture, in 3 additions. But before I do that, I'll just cream this. Alright, so as you can see, excuse me, that butter is nice and creamy and smooth. And so now the next step, we're going to add 1/3 of the mixture to our butter and beat that in. And I'm going to continue to do that in 30-second increments. So every 30 seconds I add a new addition, and I'll add 3. So once I add all 3, I'll show you what it looks like. Alright, so once I added my last addition, I beat the mixture for a good 1 or 2 minutes to really get it all fluffy. Just as a side note also, you should scrape down your sides. So now that we've done that, I'm going to go ahead, add in our mixture here, and I'm going to get a spatula so we get all that wonderful flavor. Especially if you're using an amaretto or a coffee extract, you really want to make sure that you're using every drop of it because it's so expensive. But as with many of these things, it's for a special occasion, so yeah. Anyway, so I'm going to beat this for another 2 minutes or so, and I'll show you the next step. See here, our buttercream mixture is done, and doesn't that look phenomenal? It's a beautiful, beautiful, very, very, very light brown color, and it's just phenomenal. And this is exactly what we're looking for. So our ganache is done, the buttercream is done, and our meringue is out of the oven. So what I'm going to do is clean up here. It's assembly operation now to get this dessert together, and I'm so excited to share this with you. So stay tuned, I'll be right back. What I did was I took it off the baking sheet and inverted it onto a cutting board, and I removed the parchment paper. What you're also going to need to do is trim all the sides, so you have about a 12 by 10, that's 12 by 10 inches rectangle. And then this is the part where you kind of want to be as accurate as possible, so I like to have a ruler out here. You're going to need to make 3-inch sections, because we're going to need 4 layers for this cake. So what you're going to do is go ahead and carefully press down. I know this part's a little nerve-wracking because you're like, I've gone all this way, please don't, nothing go wrong. Nothing will go wrong if you be careful. So here we go. It might be a little sticky. That's normal. And it looks like we're getting it down. All right. Oh boy. There we go. All right, so we've got 4 equal pieces. Now, this may happen to you. Don't panic. A little piece fell off. That's not the end of the world, so please, please don't panic, because it won't get you anywhere, because we're going to fix that. But if it didn't happen to you, congratulations. So now we've got 4 pieces here. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is we need to get out our ganache. So I've got my buttercream here, our kind of mocha buttercream here that looks absolutely phenomenal. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to need to get our ganache, and I'm going to show you how to assemble this step by step. So just bear with me one more second and we will go ahead and do the final assembly. Alright, so what I've done is I've taken 3 of the 4 meringue rectangles that we had and put it on this baking sheet with a wire rack, just on top of a wire rack, because what we're going to do is we're going to put about a 1/4 cup, and I'm using a 1/4 cup scoop to kind of measure this out, onto each one. So we need to put a 1/4 cup of ganache on each of the layers. So I'm going to do that quickly. And that's why you need the rack, because this will make a mess if you don't. And that would be a very annoying mess to clean up. So I had just a little bit under for this, and then a little more. So, oops. So basically now, using an offset spatula or a knife, you're going to just spread it out so that it covers the entire bottom layer. And it should just take a second, because what we're going to do is, you might be asking yourself, what about the buttercream? What we need to do first is let this set in the refrigerator. So that would be about, I don't know, ganache only takes like probably about 10-15 minutes to set. So I would say probably about 10 or 15 minutes till the ganache is set in the refrigerator. And again, the ganache layer is only going on 3 of the 4 layers. The 4th, the broken one, the broken one, if you do have a broken one, leave it as your top layer. It's much easier than trying to put it in the bottom layers, because your cake will kind of collapse, versus if it's just one on the top, there's not much it needs to support, so there's less of a chance of it becoming a disaster. So I'm just going to go ahead, finish doing this. Let me tell you guys, this cake, I know it's time consuming, but let me tell you, the end result is so rewarding. I can guarantee you, this is probably one of the best cakes you'll make. Alright, so this is now done, and it's going to go into the fridge for 15-20 minutes, and basically just until the ganache is set, and then we will go ahead and finish layering up. I just took our 3 layers on top, and I realized I made a bit of a mistake for my other meringue part that broke. I was supposed to smear the chocolate ganache on that one, because the one you don't, the 4th rectangle, you're not supposed to, that goes on the bottom layer, and I left the broken one on the bottom. So that's how we're going to have to do it. So it's time to layer up. I'm really excited about this. So we have our layers that have set. So I've got 1/2 cup of buttercream. This might be a little bit under 1/2 cup because this one's broken, but it should be about 1/2 cup. And carefully, we are going to place this on top. Place this, the chocolate face side down on top of here. And press that down. Careful, actually, when you press it down, just make sure there's no chocolate on your hand, because you don't want it to be a chocolate layer. So you can kind of guesstimate. It's really up to your preference. The recommended amount is half a cup for this particular recipe. I am just hoping this all stays together. It's always one thing I always find with recipes that are more time consuming and are more time, you're like, please, please, I hope nothing goes wrong. But no, it's all good. So that should be good enough. You can slather on as much or as little as you want. It's really all a matter of preference. Alright, so this is done. So now we'll go ahead and add our next layer. This one seems to be a bit more if you take it from the center, it's a little more secure. So we're going to put this on top. This is all going pretty good. So far so good. This is all live. I'm just going to take a bit of a napkin and clean this up. There we go. We'll add yet another layer. And just to give you a heads up as far as the next step goes, we are going to need to refrigerate this once we add our final layer. Before we put on the ganache, we need to let this set a bit for probably about an hour or two, to be quite honest with you. It does need that time just to set. Unfortunately, that's how it's got to go. There we go. Make this maybe a little bit thicker because I got a lot of buttercream left. There we go. Whoops. Some of that's falling. Alright, so now we'll go ahead and add this over the top. And so now what we need to do is basically we'll actually add some more buttercream on the top. And then this will need to go in the refrigerator, as I said, for several hours. You could even do this overnight. It's really all a matter of preference, whatever works for you. This recipe is time consuming, so it's completely understandable if you need to take a little bit of time. There we go. Add a bit more. And here we go. So this is going to go into our fridge, and when I come back we will go ahead and pour the ganache over the top, and I'll show you the next step. And there's just a side shot for you before it goes in the fridge. As just one step that I forgot to mention, very important, is after you set your butterscotch for after about 15-20 minutes, we're going to be adding it on the sides. And the reason why we set it first is so that the sides that already have a little bit don't become very messy. So you're simply going to spread the rest of your buttercream over the sides of the cake and around. It doesn't need to be perfect because obviously there's going to be a ganache on top, so you don't need to be worried about it looking all pretty. But just enough so that there's a little bit of consistency of the cream between all the layers. Now some people like to, and I should have in this case, put pieces of parchment paper underneath that you can remove after. That way you don't have to mess up your plate. But I'm not fussy about that at all. This is going to be just a casual celebration. Even though this is a fancy dessert, we'll still be casual because we like to go over the top with our desserts, but maybe not necessarily with the dessert etiquette, I guess you could say. I don't know. So yeah, just until you get all the cream that you had, and just cover it as best you can. If it doesn't cover completely all the sides, it's not a big deal. And just go ahead and spread it as evenly as possible. Don't worry about any messes, because it's not about what it looks right now, because we're going to be putting a ganache, the rest of the ganache over the top, so no need to panic. Alright, so this is going to go back into the fridge, or if you want to do this express, you can put it in the freezer for maybe 20-25 minutes for it to set. Otherwise, put it in the fridge. And once that's done, we're going to pour the ganache over the top, garnish it, and then it'll need to go in the fridge again. Alright, it's finally time to add our final ganache right over the top. So what I did was I loosened it up a bit by putting it in the microwave for about 30 or so seconds. It's mildly hot. It's not that, it's barely warm, I should say, really. And what I've got here is some toasted sliced almonds that we're going to garnish on the side, and a few hazelnuts for the top. But the first thing we do is, once we've got it all mixed in, is we are going to now pour it over the top. So I just put the ganache kind of on the top here, and what I did was I put almonds, the toasted sliced almonds around the top with the hazelnuts, and as an added bonus, I'll garnish with some confectioner powder sugar. So now this will go back in the fridge for an hour or two to set, and I mean you could even serve this the next day if you weren't planning to do this day of, but here you go. We've got ourselves a wonderful treat. I hope you give this recipe a try. It's absolutely phenomenal. Thanks for watching this video, and I will see you next time.